Hi, everybody. I'm talking to you this month about increasing your intimacy outside the bedroom. A lot of you want to talk about intimacy in the bedroom. Of course, it's important, but when most people come to see me with relationship problems, it's because they've not mastered the other intimacy. So I have 3 tips for you that I said 2, but that's 3 tips for you that I give most people in couples counseling, or if they come alone and have relationship problems, which is a thing. Don't forget, you can come alone if your significant other doesn't want to come. And I just want to share these tips with you because they're so important, and actually they work hand in hand with increasing sexual intimacy. If you can nail the intimacy outside the bedroom, it gives that great launching pad to a good sex life. So let's get to those 3 things. The one thing that I find surprising when people come in or talk about their relationship problems is that they have a little trouble coming up above the problem. It's like they're in the weeds, they're in the facts, and who's right and who's wrong, and the proof, and all the details. And the first thing I encourage people to do is to step up and out and look at the dynamics going on, because you can get a lot of information from that. And by what I'm looking for when I do that, and when I encourage my patients to do that, is to look for patterns. Because, if there's a pattern going on, you just need to disrupt part of the pattern, your part, and the whole pattern changes, right? Instead of just fixing one discussion or one topic, typically if you look at an argument, for instance, and you examine many of your arguments, you'll find the same pattern. And then all you need to do is stop one part. Let me give you an example. So I have a patient who was very frustrated at this pattern of when he would start talking about something that was difficult, his wife would shut down. In fact, she would sort of stop talking. She'd give in, I guess, cave. Yes, she would agree with him and sort of sullenly say, okay, we'll just do it your way, that's fine. And he thought he took that on face value. But then what would happen is she would talk under her breath, and he would get very upset. He'd say, well, what did you say? Or you said something, and she'd say, nothing. I said nothing. And then he knew she said something, so it became this argument about whether she said something or not. And then he would go back and try to encourage her to say it. And anyway, this would go on and on. So when we talked about this, and this was a pattern that happened a lot, his question to me was, how do I get her to stop doing that? I've asked, I've begged, I've demanded. She won't change. Well, shockingly, people don't change. So I encouraged him to change. And we went all the way back to the beginning of that pattern, which was where he said, what did you say? I advised him to simply stop saying that. It's all in his power. It's a simple thing to do. So when they ended with the agreement and she said something under her breath, he didn't say anything. He just went off about his business. And guess what? She was then left with 2 options. Either she had to go back and say it again, or she had to let it drop. So that alone changed a destructive pattern in their relationship. And that's the type of thing I'm encouraging you to look at in your own. Okay. Sometimes people journal. I always say journal with a purpose, not just write things down, but go back and look. If you want to journal your arguments over the next month or so, go back and look and see if you find that pattern and where you alone can disrupt the pattern. Okay, so that's the tip number 1. Tip number 2 is something I call the post-mortem discussion. In medicine, we go back, we gather together with our fellow physicians, and we talk about what went wrong with that patient, what went wrong with that surgery. And it's a non-threatening, collaborative approach to looking back at something that may not have gone well or went well and could go better. So many of my patients don't want to go back to those bad discussions. And I understand that. I do. It's hard to go back. If you've had an argument or a blow up, be like, Dr. Dabney, I'm not going back there. But I was gonna say all the time, but most of the time, I don't think I can't right now think of one example where someone hasn't got their courage up to go back and talk about something that went wrong and hasn't had it come out better. Because while you've been stewing about it or fretting about it or thinking about how it went better, so is your significant other. You know, so bringing it up again in a calm environment, is a way to get it all resolved. All the feelings that came afterwards and whatever got you stirred up beforehand. Typically, I give the template of saying something along the lines of, "Hey, look, that discussion didn't go well, and I feel badly about that. Here's what I think where I contributed to that going wrong. So can we please try again? I'd like to say it this way this time, you know, and I'm interested in your viewpoint." Okay, so you can go back to the postmortem. Otherwise, these blow-ups just get buried and buried and buried. And we always talk about emotions getting buried and then blowing up, but blow-ups being buried also blow up in time. And then thirdly, we talk about the preemptive strike. The preemptive strike is a strategy that is so underutilized in relationships. In fact, when I recommend it, it just seems like a foreign language. So I'm going to offer that to you today. And the preemptive strike is to, if you're having trouble approaching a topic, because either a history of a blow up or just because you know, quote unquote, that your significant other is going to go crazy about it, which often doesn't happen, but just if you think it is, any kind of anxiety going into a discussion, start with the anxiety. You don't have to start right into the discussion if you're anxious. You can say, "Look, I have to discuss something with you because it's important to me, but I don't know, I had this anxiety that's not going to go over well with you, and I don't want to have an argument." If you simply say that, you confess this feeling, it's a much better chance that your significant other is going to be prepared and they may be upset, but because you said you're concerned or anxious about it, they'll probably display that a little bit better. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with just revealing the pre-talk, right? The pre-discussion discussion. Nothing wrong with talking about your feelings about an upcoming discussion if you have them. Okay, so watch for the patterns to see where you can break it, post-mortem, and preemptive strike. Those are some things you can try in your relationship now, this weekend, in order to get those taken care of and see if you can change your relationship for the better. Okay, I always want to know how it goes, so just let me know, 757-340-8800. Thanks.